Luang Po began his talk with a poem which he spoke quite quickly, so I'm not able to give a perfect or even half-perfect rendition. But the gist of it was, if you love yourself, you love life, you learn how to use your thoughts wisely, you'll live long, safely and securely. If you're still working with a worldly aim in mind, just seeking for prestige, status, power and wealth, this will only lead you to fear and insecurity. But if you work and act as a true Dhamma practitioner, this will bring you to happiness and freedom from suffering. If you come well and you go well, the Dhamma will be in your heart, preserving you, supporting you, nourishing you. And wherever you live, you can live with a mind of loving kindness and generosity. Whatever you consume in this life, you can consume without worry or fear. These are the results and the benefits of Dhamma practice. So today I ask permission to speak on the Dhamma from you all. We've come here to the monastery to practice Dhamma, both for our own physical health and for our mental health and well-being. We're coming to do that which is beneficial for us in our life, because we see that our life, having been born as human beings, is something of value. What makes it valuable is through the development of wisdom and understanding of truth. Wisdom and knowledge allows us to make full use of this valuable life that we have been given, that we have, both now and for the future. The important thing in life is to develop spiritual virtues, and to do this we follow the path of the enlightened ones, the wise people. Following the footprints of the Aryas, the enlightened ones, is not quite the same as following the footprints of ordinary people, or in the ordinary sense. The footprints of enlightened beings are always at one with the Dhamma, with truth. And this Dhamma embodies the virtues and spiritual qualities of the Sangha, as we just chanted. Supatipanno, one who practices well in body, in speech, in mind, and the development of the mind. This is the goodness that arises from Dhamma practice, and it's the footprint or the way for us to follow in our own practice. It's what gives importance and value to our life. It's what allows us to develop ourselves to completion or perfection, samapati, to gain true wealth, meaning inner wealth or spiritual wealth. And these qualities are embodied by the Sangha, and a member of the Sangha is one who sees the danger in samsara, the endless cycle of birth and death. The circle of enlightened beings, the Arya, is characterized by the qualities of living in simplicity, developing contentment and fewness of wishes. This circle of enlightened beings is characterized by seeing the value in putting a limit on one's unwholesome craving and desires, because the mind of an Arya, an enlightened being, has seen that craving and desire and the object of craving and desire are just burdens. And they see that real or true happiness comes through the development of inner contentment, and they practice accordingly. They bring their mind in line with nature. This is something that supports the arising of peace and seclusion from the mental defilements. Physical seclusion is a necessary and supportive part of the practice, finding a peaceful, quiet place to practice. This supports the arising of inner happiness. This sense of inner peace and seclusion has to be developed and gained through the practice, through the development of knowledge and insight into the truth of nature. Nature teaches us that happiness can arise within this mind and heart, independent of external material things. It also means seeing the danger in attachment, or unwise attachment to external things. Inner happiness is the same as inner well-being. It's a feeling where the mind is free from all burdens, all fetters, all attachments. It's a state of liberation from suffering. To experience this, we have to learn how to overcome our wrong views that lead to delusion and confusion. So the practice is helping us or leading us to purity of view and purity of mind. This arises through the development of sati, mindfulness, and wisdom, panya, through wise reflection. So in the beginning of the practice, we develop our practice depending on some quiet seclusion. And this also involves learning to relate wisely to the world around us, the physical world that we're involved with. Learning to live in a way where one is in harmony and peace with nature and other people, not in conflict or at odds with the things around us. We have to learn to be at peace with the changing conditions of the world, not irritated or disturbed by them. We have to learn how to reflect wisely on experience, to loosen and abandon our unwise desires and greed that usually the cause of so much unwholesome and negative states of minds and wrong views which cause us suffering and unhappiness. So to gain this peace of mind, we practice and develop mindfulness, the one who knows, this quality of inner awareness, inner knowing. And this is supported by sampajanya, an all-round understanding or clear comprehension of what we're doing. Sati and sampajanya, these are dhammas that are of great support in our practice. They're like a ray of light that shines into the mind to show us the truth. They're the opposite of darkness, and darkness which is the characteristic of all our negative or unwholesome moods that can easily overtake our behavior. These negative moods are stimulated by our experience of pleasant and unpleasant objects in life. Ita ramana, pleasant objects, pleasant experiences. Anita ramana, unpleasant objects and experiences. And these two opposites are affecting us all the time in life. They lead us into states of delighting in, getting lost in and attracted to things, and they lead us into states of aversion, irritation and rejection, both of which cause us suffering. And these two opposites can both be abandoned through establishing mindfulness and not letting these moods take over the mind or be the basis for the creation of a sense of self forming around these moods. We learn through the practice of mindfulness not to take ownership of these different experiences or moods, and to see them just as what we say Dhamma aramanas, just mental objects that arise and pass away without creating any suffering or leaving any trace of suffering in the mind. So the practice of mindfulness in this way helps us to abandon the deluded sense of self that is always delighting in and getting averse to our experiences. It allows the mind to be free of any weaknesses or faults, and therefore free of suffering. To do this, we have to keep developing this state of awakened knowing, the mind of Buddho. Buddho means that which is awake, that which is knowing, that which is insightful. It's a sobering up or a waking up from a state of delusion and intoxication. To do this, we practice and train ourselves in all postures and in all activities. Everything that we do, all our involvement with the world, we have to develop a sense of composure and restraint with mindfulness. Learn how not to be heedful or forgetful. As we develop mindfulness, it leads to an inner sense of security and safety, and this brings us a great happiness, and you could say makes our life become purer or cleaner. This cleanliness or cleansing of our mind gives rise to many benefits in our life. Just as when you look after your body, keep it clean, that is a supportive condition for good health. If you learn to cleanse your mind, this is supportive of good mental health and peace of mind and a sense of well-being. That which cleanses the mind is this quality of sati, knowing in the present moment. It's learning to put your attention on the present moment, the paccuppanna dhamma, abandoning all unwise worries and concerns over the past, recognizing that the past is finished, it's over, we must let it go, and abandoning all worries and concerns about the future, wisely reflecting that the future has not yet arrived and we cannot yet really know it. Fix your mind in the present moment, and this is what will lead to insight and wisdom that will free you from suffering. This practice of fixing the mind in the present moment at first seems a little bit unfamiliar or strange, because we're not used to it. But over time, if we keep practicing, we'll see the benefit of it, and we'll see that it really does lead to freedom from all kinds of worry and mental agitation. It's like when you go to live in a new place that you've never been before. At first you're feeling a bit worried, nervous, or even fearful. But over time, as you get used to that place, you become more at ease, feel more comfortable there. So through the practice of mindfulness, we learn and get to know how to deal well with all the experiences of life, how to deal well with other people, with society, and also to deal well with our own internal world, the world of the mind and its moods. This is the quality of the lokavidu, the one who transcends the world, transcends the worldly dhammas of gain and loss, praise and blame, status, loss of status, happiness and suffering. The worldly dhammas are the dhammas of unenlightened beings. You might compare it to as if the dhamma of, say, immature or young people who haven't yet grown up or seen the truth. Unenlightened beings are always getting lost in the 8 worldly dhammas. So we learn to practice meditation to develop peace and insight that will be supportive conditions for the transcendence of the worldly dhammas. The peace and insight that we develop is comparable to the immune system of the mind. Just like the body requires an immune system to protect itself from disease and viruses that cause us ill health, the mind requires an immune system to protect us from falling into suffering, agitation and worry. This immune system protects us from being stirred up and disturbed by our different experiences of the worldly dhammas. Instead, we're learning to bring the mind to peace, not to be swayed by the moods of liking and disliking that tend to arise. Keeps the mind free and peaceful, liberated from unwholesome mental states. And to do this, we have to constantly be developing mindfulness through our meditation. So a useful technique to develop this is the technique of mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati. The result of practicing mindfulness of breathing is both a peaceful body and a peaceful mind. It involves establishing mindful awareness, knowing the breath from moment to moment as it enters and leaves the body. It leads to a state of composure, concentration, tranquility, where we're able to see and know our own mind very clearly. And we can see that which is beneficial and that which is harmful arising in the mind. This is the kind of knowledge and result that comes through the practice of samatha meditation, tranquility meditation, based on the breath. Anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing, is a foundation for the development of insight, for the development of knowledge and understanding that supports this immunity or immune system from the causes of suffering in the mind. It actually falls in within the bounds of the satipatthanas, the four foundations of mindfulness that the Buddha taught. It comes under the practice of Gaya-nupassana satipatthana, where we fix our attention on this body as an object for our awareness, to bring the mind to a point where it abandons its attachments and its unwise lust and attachment for this body. And the result of this practice of fixing attention on the body with mindfulness brings the sense of Gaya Viveka, body seclusion of the body. This comes about by focusing the mind on the body as a rupa dhamma, physical phenomena, and seeing it in line with truth, satya dhamma. The truth that is present and exists all the time. We're developing awareness of this truth by focusing on the body, to see the body as just the body, just as a physical phenomena. Knowing it for what it is. It's something made up of different elements, has different component parts. And learning to see and know each element, each component part as it is, without attachment and delusion, without a sense of self. This knowledge and vision of the body in line with truth is seen that it is just part of nature, something in nature, made up of natural elements and made up of earth, air, fire and water. And in addition we have the space element and the element of consciousness. All these 6 elements are without a self, a being, a person. Each of them is just performing a function in nature without any self or owner. They all arise and pass away according to their nature. They come into existence, upati. They exist for a while, diti, and then they cease, bhanga. And these 3 time periods of any physical phenomena that you're putting your attention on, you can see that it's subject to these 3 time periods of arising, existing, and then passing away. What reveals this to the mind is the application of sati, mindfulness, and then investigation of the truth. And as we keep doing that, the sense of self and the importance that we usually give to this sense of self starts to diminish. That sense of identifying with the body as a self starts to disappear, and what's left is a sense of peaceful seclusion of mind, as the mind is no longer caught up in its attachment to identification to the body. So this is what we mean by this immunity from suffering. It means the immunity from the 8 worldly dhammas. They're no longer able to take over the mind in the normal way. So the mind is free from craving and desire that tend to push us around. We see that craving is a source of delusion, not the real cause of happiness. And this insight that arises, it's a bit like the effect of a child growing up in the world and no longer viewing the world as they did in the past as a child, sort of caught up, infatuated with things without really understanding things very well. Now the mind grows up like the mind of an adult, and it can see craving as it really is. It's a cause for suffering, not happiness. When the mind sees that, it becomes tired, fed up of attaching and desiring and craving things. It's ready to give up craving. It can see that all the pleasure-seeking and attraction, all the aversion and negativity, these are all experiences that are ultimately just experiences in and of themselves. There's no being or person or self who is owning them or in control of them. They are just experiences that arise and pass away. The mind understands how worldly happiness is a cause for delusion. When things go well, we say, I am happy. It's that I that we add on to the experience. That's where delusion forms. We identify with it. Really, it's just an experience arising and passing away without any person or being involved in it. If we can uproot this attachment to the different moods of liking and disliking, happiness and suffering, this is what frees the mind from the worldly dhammas. It's a state of liberation and characterized by inner well-being. Because the mind is free from any form of intoxication or infatuation, it necessarily means if there's no intoxication, there's no suffering. And if there's no suffering, then the mind becomes very cool. It's no longer hot and disturbed by things. This heat or the fire of the mind comes from ignorance and delusion. As the Buddha pointed out to the 3 Kassapa brothers, he said, Raga kina, dosa kina, moha kina. These are the fires of the mind that actually the effect of raga, or greed, anger and delusion, these burn the mind. The nature of them is actually to burn the mind. They take away its peace and coolness. They're hot fires that are constantly affecting the mind if we don't address them and if we don't do anything about them. But they're internal fires, so they're subtle, they're hard to see. An external fire is obvious. We can see what it's burning, what it's doing. We can see that it's hot and destructive. But the destructive natures of the internal fires are very subtle. It's difficult for us to really see them. When we don't see the destructive nature of these internal fires, then our habit is to keep adding fuel to the fire, keep building it up, and naturally we keep getting burnt over and over again. Unless we come to start using the practice of meditation, kammatthana, as a skillful means to pacify the mind, to uproot this infatuation and to extinguish these fires. As we practice meditation, we come to realize that all beings, all of us, must experience impermanence in our life. We all come to experience decline, degeneration, and ultimately we must die from this world. The practice of meditation leads us to realize and understand that this is just a normal fact of life. It brings the mind to accept this truth. We may begin contemplating externally at first to see the impermanent nature of the things around us, this physical world, and see how it's subject to constant change and degeneration. And this is teaching us the whole time. Gaya Gada Sati, where one fixes attention on the body, reveals this truth for us in our own lives as well. We see that this body is subject to birth, aging and death, constantly changing, constantly aging. And this is just the normal way for all formations, physical and mental. When we use mindfulness and wisdom to contemplate this, it gives rise to a sense of detachment and seclusion in the mind, what we call citta viveka. It's as if the mind starts to put down a heavy burden that it has previously been used to holding onto and carrying around. Now the mind starts to detach and loosen its attachment from the body, and so there's a great sense of peace arising as this heavy object is put down. This is, you could say, where we're learning not to put any more fuel on the fires of greed, anger and delusion. And suffering is therefore not supported or encouraged anymore. What arises instead is the quality of upekkha, equanimity, and a purity of mind. This is characterized by a sense of correctness in this mind, and this sense of correctness or seeing things as just the way they are, this doesn't disappear, it stays there. The formal way of describing this is one has a penetration and insight into the Four Noble Truths, as the Buddha described through his enlightenment experience. We understand what is suffering, we know that as suffering as suffering. We know its cause is craving and attachment, and we abandon that. And we realize the end of suffering, nirodha, and we understand what the path that leads to the end of suffering is. We understand the opposites of the world. And if there's light, there is dark. There is heat, there is cold, suffering and happiness. But this insight leads us to transcend these opposites, takes the mind to a place of stillness, and the mind of the lokavidu, the knower of the world, with an all-round knowing of physical and mental conditions, seeing them as they are. The mind sees things according to truth, the reality, and without any, or free from any attachment to attraction or aversion, and all the moods that arise based on that. So there's no more suffering, no more happiness in the worldly sense, just peace and purity and cleanliness of mind, just compassion and kindness based on this peaceful state of mind. The mind becomes cool, so it's without fear or insecurity. The mind like this sees all other beings as if just relatives. We're all part of the same family, all going through the same things together. It's without bias. This cool heart you could describe as the heart of Sukhato, and that quality that we attribute to the Buddha as one who goes well, comes well, exists well. And because the mind is imbued with the goodness that arises from the practice. So the Lord Buddha praised human beings because they have merit, meaning that they have the potential to develop themselves in this way, to find true peace of mind through developing their intelligence and developing this kind of understanding. He had the teaching, Kiccho Manusa Patilapo, human birth is the greatest good fortune. Because having been born as human beings, then we have the chance to realize our full potential and bring our minds to understand the truth, the Four Noble Truths. But to do this we need heedfulness in all postures and at all times. we need to develop a sense of care and attention in all our activities and all our involvement with the world and other people. We have to learn to live in the world in a way that's harmless and without causing disturbance. You can compare it to a bee that takes its food from different flowers. It just moves from flower to flower, taking a little bit of pollen here, a little bit of pollen there, but without harming the flower that it takes from. And this is the way a practitioner lives in the world, in a harmless way. They live in the world with a mind of santi sukha, with peace and happiness derived from their spiritual practice. They do that which is beneficial for themselves and others because they've been developing sati and mindfulness and wisdom and the understanding that comes from this. You could say it's the maturation or the maturity of our intelligence and spiritual qualities. In the end, this insight must arise, though, from our own practice, our own efforts. It's our own responsibility to do this. You might say it's our duty. Just as we have a duty to find food for the body, to keep it going, keep it healthy, we also have a duty to find food for the mind, which means the spiritual virtues that come through the practice of Dhamma. This is what will support our peace and inner well-being. This will be the cause for leading a cool, happy life. When we're in harmony with nature, when our mind accepts the truth of life, the truths of life, the truths of nature, that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self. When the mind can accept these truths and penetrate them, it's like a ray of light or a beam of light that starts to shine out from the mind. Maybe at first our wisdom is fairly undeveloped, so it's just like a very small spot of light that arising in the mind. But as we train, it starts to widen, broaden its effect and becomes a whole radiant light that lights up the whole mind, illuminating the truth for us at all times in all our experiences. And the Buddha said that nothing can compare with this kind of light. Nati panya sama apa. The light of the sun or the moon or any kind of electric light in this world is nothing, nowhere near as bright as the radiance of wisdom and right view. So this is something we have to develop through our practice. And today we've come together as a group to practice in harmony. We practice with the qualities of Sāvaka Sangho, the qualities of peace and harmlessness, and developing our practice in a good way, a way that is good and well. Vadakatha sadhu karang dathamase sadhu sadhu sadhu